around, it can kill you very quickly. So while you're trying to get all of this Yisan stuff set up, you might not have enough time. That's the big deal.
Yeah.
So you have Reid's deck list in front of you. What do we got going on here?
So it looks kind of like a green devotion deck. There aren't a lot of planeswalkers, but he does have 3 Nykthos. Kiyora's follower doing a Voyaging Satyr impression.
Okay.
And then, like I said earlier, a solid toolbox of things. So he has a Burning Tree Emissary to increase his devotion, and if he searches for that off Yisan, he can play another spell. Has a few Courser of Crufiscus, Reclamation Sage, a Nylea's Disciple, an Arbor Colossus, and he goes all the way up to Aetherling.
Okay, fair enough. This should be nice, as Jared is going to start game number 1 here with a Temple of Plenty. Actually, a little surprised to see that card in his deck list. Green-white aggro decks have moved away from Temple. You normally find 4 Mana Confluence, 4 Temple Gardens, and then, a bunch of plains and a bunch of forests, but he actually has 4 Temple of Plenties.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the tough things with this deck is that you really want all of your lands to enter the battlefield untapped so that you can play your spells in a timely manner, but also, like, your mana costs are there. You have like a lot of colored mana symbols in your cards. So yeah, we do see a lot of green-white decks cutting these temples, but then your mana base ends up kind of sketchy as well. So there's a give and take there.
Temple of Mystery is where Duke is going to be getting things. He will scry, and that card is going to go to the bottom. Now for Jared, he is going to really have no idea what Reid is up to, so this should make for a very interesting game from the green-white side. But at the end of the day, I mean, green-white is going to play creatures and attack, so Reid had better get the show on the road, as Jared is going to play a Temple Garden. It looks like tapped. It will be, and he's going to play an Experiment 1 to start things off on turn number 2.
Yeah, see, if that Temple of Plenty was a Mana Confluence, maybe Jared could have gotten the game started a little bit earlier.
We have ourselves a Kiyora's follower on turn number 2 from Duke. You see that Jared's going to take a look. We can bring that up for you guys at home as well. Doesn't see a ton of play, but it is definitely a powerful card. It can untap another target permanent. So, he can accelerate with that. He can untap Yisan, do a little fun stuff there. Can untap creatures, obviously, and block, giving it kind of semi-vigilance. Pretty nice card here.
Yep, yeah, and untap Nykthos, which I think is the big one.
It's time for a Voice of Resurgence. That will evolve Experiment 1 into a 2/2. So Jared does remember that, and I imagine he will get into the red zone here shortly, but we will see.
I don't know, that's kind of the thing with a weird card like Kiyora's follower, and we see Jared doesn't even attack. We're like, maybe he doesn't think that the follower is powerful enough to offer the trade with Experiment 1.
Sure. I mean, Experiment 1 presumably will go into a 3/3 next turn, so maybe he doesn't want to offer the trade this turn.
Yeah, and that makes sense, but it would also slow Reid down, but he doesn't know what Reid is up to necessarily, so it can be tough.
That is Nykthos, and now we have a copy of Pelucranos, the World Eater. So the 5/5 Hydra is going to be here to block the road as Keys will untap his 2 lands and move to his 4th turn of the game, and we'll see what he can put together here, as he did miss his land drop last turn, so that's definitely something to be cognizant of. Taking a look at Key's deck list here, I mean, we're pretty straightforward. We've got 4 copies of Boonsatyr, 4 Voice of Resurgence, 4 Experiment 1, 4 Fleece Main Lion, 4 Smiters, 2 Sunblade Elves. He's got his spells in Celestia Charm and Advent of the Worm, 2 main deck copies of God's Willing, and then he's got 3 Banishing Lights and 2 copies of Ajani, Caller of the Prize. So nothing really out of the ordinary here.
The God's Willing's main deck are a little strange. Normally you see those sitting in the sideboard, or they have copies of Ajani's Presence instead, but that's definitely very interesting. I do like kind of like lowering the curve a little bit, having that cheap interaction, and he has a decent amount of scry going on with the temples and the God's Willing, so maybe he can keep his aggression going into the mid game a little bit better than normal green-white decks could.
A Fleece Main Lion here pre-combat is going to evolve Experiment 1 into a 3/3. However, Jared, I believe, still has no good attacks in this situation, so Pelucranos doing a really, really nice job here for Duke, as he did accelerate into that threat. We'll see what Keys has on this turn if he wants to do anything else. He could throw Voice of Resurgence, I guess, away to make a bigger creature.
Yeah, I mean, he's losing a little bit of value there by not being able to evolve the Experiment 1. So if he had a 1-drop, maybe you would see an attack there, just to get a 4/4 and then evolve his creature further, and then maybe next turn he could make a big attack and, put things out of Pelucranos range.
But no attack from Jared, so Duke is going to untap those 3 lands. He will take a draw. We'll see what he can put together here on this turn. Again, what kind of makes this interesting, you see the deck is labeled as Green-Blue Devotion. It is kind of that, as you do see Nykthos out there, but it also has some other interesting things going on with Yisan. He's also got a couple of copies of Prime Speaker Zagana. I mean, this deck is doing a lot of different things. There's a couple copies of Chord of Calling here for that toolbox engine that you did mention.
Yep, and he also has a main deck copy of Plasm Capture.
There it is.
Which I love to see.
That card did not see enough play for me. I was a big fan of that card.
Yeah, I mean, like, how much are you willing to pay for a mana drain,
I don't know if it's green, green, blue, blue.
Okay.
It's hard to cast.
That's fair,
yeah.
But we are playing Standard.
That's true, too. That's true, too. You can definitely do some broken things with it. Here's a Breeding Pool untapped, old school Breeding Pool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Reid is an old school player. You see the Beta Forest, like, he's almost certainly owned these cards for many years.
This is an Elvish Mystic. and he will just pass the turn back, kind of representing, you know, Nykthos activation with Pelucranos, could be representing a Quarter Calling, could be representing, I think he could cast Plasm Capture with that mana that's out there. It's a little bit awkward, but I think he might be able to get there.
No.
No?
No.
Just green, green, blue, blue. I don't know if he can do it like with Nykthos.
Yeah, you could activate Nykthos for 4 mana, for 4 green mana, and then you could untap 1 blue source.
Okay. There's a Smiter. That's going to evolve Experiment 1 into a 4/4. But again, the issue for Jared is he is, you know, putting solid creatures on the table. He still has no good attacks.
Yeah, green-white really needs something like a Banishing Light or a Selesnya Charm to get through something like Pelucranos.
Yeah, he has 4 charms. He does have 3 copies of Banishing Light, but it doesn't look like he's drawn any just yet. So as he continues to build his board, he's just not really getting anywhere at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible that he could have one of them and is just waiting until he has a big enough board to remove the Pelucranos and then make a big attack and then finish Reid on the next big attack. It's kind of underwhelming to have, you know, like the 2/2 Experiment 1 and the 2/2 Voice, and then like Banishing Light at the next turn, just get in for 4. But
yep. It's time for attackers. So here comes Experiment 1 as a 4/4.
I feel like there might be a God's Willing in
yeah, I mean,
hand.
there are 2 of those. And, you know, the interesting thing here is that, again, you mentioned that God's Willing is not really a main deck card. So, you know, will Reid play around this? Does he even really care about that sort of thing at this point? Not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, Reid is certainly a very thoughtful player, but that is one of those things that's it's really tough to put someone on.
So it looks like Pelucranos is going to go in front of Experiment 1 here. 5/5 versus a 4/4. We know who wins that fight.
It's the Hydra.
It is the Hydra.
Every time.
You are correct. So we have our blocks here. We'll see if there's a God's Willing, and it looks like there is. And so there is God's Willing. Of course, likely to name green here to keep that alive and force through some points of damage here. It'll be forcing through 5 points of damage.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. Like, you get through the 5 points of damage, hopefully dig for a real removal spell that can get rid of Pelucranos for sure. The only issue is if you let Reid untap with Cures, Follower, and Nykthos, like, Pelucranos might do some bad things to you.
Yes. We've got some activations here. So this is going to be a large monstrosity activation to go after the Voice of Resurgence to make sure that doesn't deal any damage. So that's going to get that off the table, and then we'll have an elemental token come in. So there goes the Voice. Pelucranos grows into a 7/7. And just a moment, Evan Irwin will make his debut on the weekend.
Not surprising there.
No, not at all.
This green-white deck has done pretty well for itself in the last few weeks, picked up a lot of steam.
Yeah, second at the Pro Tour. We saw, you know, you said a couple of weeks, and that's definitely true. It seems like over the past month we have Boswell finished in second place when we were in Baltimore.
Scott Lipp won the tournament in Kansas City.
Yep, and then Jackson Cunningham gets second in the Pro Tour. Of course, we can't forget, you know, Martin Juza. He ended up getting 11th, I believe. So, I mean, it's been doing really, really well recently.
And it just kind of flies under the radar, too, you know? It's like, it's one of those decks that people might be scared of, but they're like, you know, like, how many people are going to play this deck? And then it just almost always puts up a solid finish, even though there aren't that many people playing it.
Yeah, I mean, it always seems like we have 1 or 2 copies in the top 8. Even when we were in Syracuse, we had 2 of them in the top 8 there. So
yeah, but it's not something most people talk about.
This is definitely true. People are always talking about Thoughtseize and Mono Blue Devotion, and you know those decks. You know what's the appropriate splash in Black Devotion decks? Is Mono Blue good right now? And heck, even everyone's really talking about Rebel Red right now, which I imagine Green White is pretty good against. It's not as good, I think, as you would think, but it's pretty good against it.
It can be. I mean, as long as your green-white deck doesn't draw a lot of like the bad land in the deck, whether it be Mana Confluence or Temple of Plenty, and you curve out really nicely, like most of your guys brick wall the Rebel Red creatures. So
Pelucranos is coming in the red zone. It's an attack for 7 here from Duke, and we'll see if Keys has any interest in blocking or if he will take some damage here, as Reid is attacking with all that mana available. And again, Monstrosity has already been activated on that Pelucranos, so that cannot happen again. And it looks like Keys says he will take 7 points of damage. So Duke will go to his second main phase. He will activate Nykthos for some mana here. And it's time to deploy a copy of Prophet of Kruphix.
See, that's one of the cards that Reid has 4 of in his deck. The full amount. And it is really good with Yisan, very good with Pelucranos.
I like this theme deck.
Very good with Court of Calling, and, you know, Reid has built himself a nice little deck here.
Jared's going to draw and play Mana Confluence. Now he has 5 mana, which opens up a couple things for his deck to do, Boon Satyr being bestowed among them. But the Prophet is a card that I think a lot of people have been hoping, okay, when is this actually going to see play? Because this card is completely busted. We've seen Seedboard Muse in the past. This is kind of that on steroids. Untap all creatures and lands you control during each other player's untap step, and you can play creature cards as though they had flash. Reid has all the mana in the world to do what he wants to do now.
And all of his guys have flash. I can't imagine that if Jared attacks this turn that things will end well for him.
Yeah, I can't imagine that either. I mean, between any creatures just jumping in the way or Court of Calling into the mix, it seems like very, very dangerous, but he's not going to get anywhere by not attacking.
Yeah, exactly. Things just get worse for him, and he does have mana to at least monsters his Fleecemane Lion, so there is that. He will almost certainly not be losing that during this combat, but this is the point where you look at Reid Duke and you're just like, do your worst.
Well, we're going to see what it's going to be in just a minute. And
I can't wait.
Yeah. If you ever played against Reid before, it can be pretty bad.
Yes.
But Reid, as you do know, he's going to take his time. He's going to make sure he doesn't make a mistake here. He's going to consult his hand, figure out what the best blocks and best play will be. That's one of the things I always enjoy when I watch Reid play, is that nothing is ever too quick. It's never too slow either. He always gives things, you know, the proper amount of time to think things through, and then he makes his move.
Yeah.
And his move is always terrifying.
Yeah. Very, very thoughtful player, methodical, knows what's going on. So it may seem kind of strange for him to take so long, even though, you know, his play is excellent, but he's just taking his time, making sure he does it right, and here we see a Prime Speaker Zagana.
With Flash, come on into the party. He's going to draw a whole bunch of cards. That's going to be real big, and now we're going to have a nice blocker. I know Andrew Shrout's not here on the sideboard. Nick Miller is, but Andrew Shrout can probably hear Prime Speaker coming into play. This is one of his favorite cards. So Duke is going to draw 7 of them.
That's it?
That's it. It's a rough road here for Reid. And this means he has excellent blocks. He's a high life total here at 15. No real risk of him dying this particular turn because Ajani Calder Pride is not involved. Now Reid gets to look at, you know, his group of options and figure out what the best way to take this turn is, and now the following turns as well.
Yeah, one of the options I saw as he was fanning through his hand was the Plasm Capture.
Oh, beautiful.
So
beautiful. I'm not sure he's going to need that. There's a Corsair Crew fix. I guess he has mana left over.
Yep,
he can put
had
that
some
in
mana
play.
floating from the Nykthos plus Kiora's Follower.
What an adorable turn this is. You
Yeah.
see Reid explain that. He's like, I had a lot of mana, so that's what my deck does. So this is a delight.
Yep, Jared said, do your worst, and Reid obliged him. Drew a fresh new hand.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. So Prime Speaker's going to do some blocking. Pelucanos is going to do some blocking here. Maybe the Prophet will. We'll see. As Reid kind of explains where all of his mana came from here, you can see him kind of pointing at the Kiora's Follower, the Nykthos. Here's how I generated all that mana to be able to do all these broken things, draw a brand new hand, and now I'm going to slaughter your team.
Yeah.
So the blocks will be here in just a moment.
It all started with a Kiora's Follower on turn 2.
This is true.
Just going to point that out.
This is true. Top card here is Yisan.
There it is.
So now Jared has to be probably wondering, okay, now what the heck's really going on here? I don't have any idea what you're up to. But I mean, it feels like, you know, it's kind of weird. It just feels like kind of like a green-blue value deck that can do some kind of over-the-top things.
Yeah.
I don't want to say Birthing Pod-esque, but I mean, there are a lot of creatures here. You know, Yisan kind of plays that role a bit. Cord does too. I mean, none of these cards are as powerful as Birthing Pod, but it's kind of one of those toolbox creature decks.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. And it is nice that he has redundant copies with like Yisan and Court of Calling. He has a lot of ways to search out the specific creatures that he might want at any certain point. So I can imagine if, like, Jared has some follow-up creatures, Reid might want to find his Nylea to deal, like, lethal trample damage. But given the fact that he just drew an entirely new hand, like, he might just be able to find it.
Yeah.
You know?
Experiment 1 is going to regenerate. It's going to scale down a little bit. Now Jared's going to tap 5 mana. This is probably going to bestow of Boon Satyr here. He's going to take 1 from the Mana Confluence to do so, and we'll see where he puts that bestow. And it's going to be over there to try to beat this Prime Speaker in combat on the Floxodon Smiter.
Yeah, it looks like just a trade there.
Yeah, they'll trade. Smiter's going to go away. Boon Satyr's going to come into play. As you know, the damage will be dealt. The Smiter will die, and then, of course, Boon Satyr is left behind. So a little bit of work done there from Jared, but by and large, not a great turn for him as he gets ambushed pretty badly due to the Prophet.
Yeah, Prophet definitely doing some work, and that's where it really shines, is in these like mid-rangey creature mirrors. Reid's deck is interesting in that it doesn't contain any Planeswalkers main deck, so his deck is mostly just a pile of creatures, so it doesn't look like his blue-white or Esper matchup is going to be that great, but in matchups like this against green-white aggro, and I would have to assume against something like Rabble Red, like his deck was really going to shine.
Do you think it's appropriate for, this particular tournament or tournaments moving forward to maybe try to fade the blue-white decks?
That's entirely possible. I mean, this tournament is 10 rounds of Swiss. Over the course of the day, how many blue-white decks do you really expect to play against? Like maybe one or two. You can afford to take one loss, almost certainly, and anything else past that is kind of sketchy, but I don't think that Reid's matchup, especially when his deck is doing like all sorts of weird stuff and the blue-white deck might not know what to value, that he can certainly like win that matchup. It's just very difficult.
Yeah, with how well, we've seen Black Devotion decks doing, and Rabble Red has been doing really, really well recently, it might be time to play a deck that is good against those and soft against a blue-white deck. It's tough to be soft against a deck that has Verdict and Revelation. I imagine you want to beat those decks, but in Standard right now, you can't beat everything, which I actually think makes the format a pretty good one. Right,
and it should be noted that Reid walked in today and was like, I'm playing a Brew. Like he is looking to have fun. Obviously, he thinks his deck is good to some extent, Maybe it's not a format breaker or anything, but I definitely think Reid is willing to try and play that game where, like, maybe I just won't play against any blue-white decks.
Reid is going to make an attack here, and as he does that, and Keys decides how he wants to block with this Boot Satyr if he does. Just did see Jared Betcher walking by with a match slip yet again.
Shocker.
He's known to do that.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's off to a 1-0 start. I'm wondering what the flavor of the day is for his Black Devotion deck, what color he's splashing. I haven't talked to him yet today.
He doesn't seem like one to do the super popular like white or green splash. But maybe it's so unpopular now that he will play the green splash.
We saw blue in Syracuse when he won 2 weeks ago. We've seen red when he's top 8 at invitationals. So we'll see what he's up to. No, you really don't.
And that's one of the strengths with him as a player in general. It's just like you never know what he has in his deck or what type of deck he's playing.
Boon Satyr looks like it's going to get in front of Pelucranos. And Reid is going to generate some mana here with Nykthos. What are we up to?
14 mana?
What does he have?
I feel like this is a chord for Nylea, pump my Pelucranos for 5?
Maybe. We'll see. This is fun. What is he going to get out of the toolbox now? It is Nylea. Okay. Good call, Jerry T.
Yeah. I have played these green decks before. I have not gone as deep as Yisan and Prophet Crucifix, but I've courted for a Nylea once or twice.
So the God of the Hunt shows to the party. Devotion is fulfilled. Not that that really matters a ton here. What matters is actually that it's going to give the Pelucranos trample, and then we can see some pumps with the excess mana. He might be able to just deal lethal this turn. Top card here is going to be Breeding Pool from the Courser. So 1, 2.
He was 4 short, so he would need 2 pumps.
Not sure if it's necessary mana. They're communicating back and forth here.
Yep.
And it does look like he has enough to push enough damage through and win the game. So Reid Duke with his green-blue Devotion Brew up a game here over Jared Keys playing green-white aggro. We're going to turn our attention to the sideboards here as both players will go into their deck boxes. I'll look at 3 copies of Unflinching Courage, 2 Adjoining Steadfast, 2 Celestial Flare, 3 Mistcutter Hydra, 2 Setessan Tactics, 2 Glare of Heresy, and a Banishing Light. I like an additional Banishing Light here. Got to get some of those things off the board as we saw Pelucranos brickwall Jared that entire game.
Yep.
And then the tactics, I imagine, are okay in this matchup. There is some, assembly required. It does take some time to kind of get that online.
That is certainly true, but Tactics is a card that I really love in these mid-range creature decks. Like, Reid is really looking to get off to a fast start with some mana creatures and punish Jared with like Prophet of Crucifix and just kind of like take the information away from him.
Okay.
And Setessan Tactics really punishes like both of those strategies.
Okay.
And also, I'm not sure how important Jared feels like Yisan is in the matchup. Maybe it's a little slow, but if Reid has a draw where he was really looking to milk that thing, Tactics can like break out of that too.
Yeah, that's actually probably pretty important. Like, we didn't see Yisan in action that game, but Jared did see a Yisan that game.
Right.
From the top of his deck, and that could, maybe trigger something inside that's like, okay, like maybe this is what this deck is actually up to, and if that thing is in play and he gets to activate that a couple times, I'm in some serious trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you have on Reid's side as far as sideboard is concerned? I'm sure it's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. He has 3 copies from Negate, 1 Dispel, 1 Reclamation Sage, 3 Nylea's Disciples, 2 Jace Architect of Thought, 1 Jace Memory Adept, 1 Setessan Tactics, 1 Skylasher, 2 Mistcutter Hydras. So Reclamation Sage is a card that he is probably going to want here. He already has a main deck copy, but he should know that Jared is going to have at least a few copies of Banishing Light in his green-white deck. The Nylea's Disciples are really great in race situations and just to give him time to set up and do something pretty sick like Prime Speaker Zagana. Setessan Tactics will almost certainly come in here. But other than that, I mean, a lot of it is just like stuff that Reid really wants against control decks.
Okay. These players will be underway in game number 2 here in just a moment. I know there are players at home wondering if we're going to have a deck tech with Reid. Don't worry, we will. I don't know how long his matches are going to take, but everyone is very interested about this deck. Nick Miller will sit down with him in the sideboard. Hopefully after this match, we'll get that recorded, but depends on how long it's going to take. That said, we do want to talk about our state championships. That is coming up later this year. October 11th and the 12th, 2014. StarCityGames.com/states is where you're going to find the information for that. If you do win the tournament, you will get the artwork on a playmat that you do see in front of you, actually in black and white, along with a medal. Now, I, myself, am a 2-time state champion. You?
One time.
One time.
And not bad.
I beat you in states once.
Sort of. Not really. Do you want me to tell the story?
Well, if we go look at the match record, it says that I won.
Yeah. Okay.
And I really think that's all that matters.
Fine. I will just throw out there that my main deck was 65 cards.
That's true.
And we played in top 8. I believe.
We did. We played in the Swiss, too.
Yeah, we played in the Swiss where I destroyed you.
That's accurate.
And yes, you won in top 8, sort of. Asterisk.
I did win in top 8. I'd like to thank you for that concession.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I didn't win the tournament.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You should be.
I lost the very next round very fast.
I left. I was out of the building. Cedric was out of the building almost right behind me.
Yeah, almost before you, actually.
Yeah.
That's how fast I lost. But state championships, a great program. Spring States was so successful that we're able to do autumn states now too. October 11th and 12th. StarCityGames.com/states for more information. We hope to see you guys there, as it is a lot of fun, as is watching Reid Duke play Magical cards.
It is. It really is.
I feel like every time I watch Reid, I learn something. Just like, you know.
Not even necessarily about like how to play Magic, but just like how to conduct yourself.
Yeah.
How to be a human being.
Yes. You know, I truly enjoy the fact that he never plays like too fast. You'll see a lot of players when they are winning, they play super fast and kind of sloppy.
Yeah.
And that just never happens.
Yeah, Reid is definitely one of those people that realizes that like, okay, I am probably winning this game. I am likely to win. What are the things that could happen that would cause me to lose? Because I definitely do not want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want anywhere near a loss.
Yeah, even when he's winning, even when he's attacking for lethal, he is very careful to not make any misstep.
A Temple of Plenty is how game number 2 is going to start here for Keys. He will leave the top card on top and pass the turn back over to Duke. Duke will draw a card, and we'll see if he has anything fun to do on turn number 1. He started with a Temple of Mystery last game. And he's in the tank already, see?
Yeah.
It's turn 1. He's deep in. I believe his draw for the turn was a Nick, though, so he's going to do some planning.
Yeah, and he had a Temple of Mystery already. I'm not sure if he had an Elvish Mystic or anything, but
he's going to scry, consult the hand here, see if he wants to put that on the top or the bottom before passing the turn back over to Keys. But he is very methodical in his ways, and it's led to a lot of wins. We've known Reid for a while, actually. You know, I remember playing him at a Nationals in 2009.
Okay.
Where
I was trying to think of the first time I met Reid, and I can't remember. It just feels like I've known him all my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really, really long time. Here's an experiment one after a Temple of Plenty. I remember playing against him in the Nationals where he like made a couple mistakes against me, and I was like, man, you know, I know you from like internet forums and stuff, and those mistakes don't really happen anymore.
Yeah, you're just like, well, buddy, in a couple of years you'll be really good, and now he's better than both of us.
Yes, he is.
So.
Yes, he is. A Mana Confluence here is land number 3 for Jared. And now we have a creature. We do. It's a Voice of Resurgence. Will Truly Evolve Experiment 1. Into the red zone we do go, and Duke is going to go down to 18. Again, that 1 mana available for Keys did represent God's Willing last game. We'll see if it's still in his deck this game.
It's hard to say. It can be a card that, you know, Duke's creatures are green from what Jared has seen so far, so that could be a good way to get in the last few points with, say, a giant elemental token or something, or prevent his guy from getting shot down from Pelucranos. But generally not the most exciting card.
If Pelucranos comes down on turn number 3 again, it looks a lot like game number 1. However, this game, Keys actually has the Celestial Charm to get that thing off the table and keep pressing his advantage. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I do too. It is a little awkward that, you know, Jared's mana developed kind of, you know, a little slow this game. He had the turn 2 Experiment 1, same as game 1, and he has the Smiter in his hands. And the last 2 turns, he's had 1 mana left unavailable just because he wanted to pace his creatures in such a way to get maximum value out of his Experiment 1. So that's kind of unfortunate. His deck is not really operating at full capacity, but he's still doing a pretty good job, especially since he was able to remove the Pelucranos.
We have ourselves a free profit of Crew Fix. It comes into play, it untaps everything. 2-3 on defense, and you just see Elvish Mystic on defense as well if those things need to block. Duke is at a relatively high life total here at 14, but we know the green-white deck can deal damage in very large chunks. That's what makes it very, very scary. You saw Keys also play his 4th land this turn, that untapped Forest, which represents a card like Advent of the Worm moving forward.
Yeah. This attack is not that strange when you realize that Jared could have Advent, which would evolve the Experiment 1 up to enough to take down the Prophet of Crew Fix, but I don't know. What do you think about potentially trading the Voice here?
I mean, trading Voice just to get maybe a bigger creature in play is, you know, a little bit. It's something I kind of like, you know, but also I think this deck is fine just because, like, the green-white deck has tricks. You know, you have Selesnya Charm to give +2/+2 and trample to kind of push your advantage over that thing. You know, you definitely have some options, but at the same time, you have to be aware that, like, Reid has options as well. He has 5 mana available.
Yeah, that is true.
That attack's a little bit scary, but it's also, you know, if my Voice dies, I still get a 2/2 out of the deal, so that's okay. And now it looks like we have a Smiter. So he's going to play the Smiter actually post-combat. It looks a little funny because it's evolving Experiment 1 like this, but by leaving that mana available, you know, he's able to bluff some tricks. Now, that turn he didn't have any, or at least he didn't want to cast one. So.
Well, also it's nice where if he did have something and Reid played something like another copy of Pelucranos, then Jared would have his mana available to do whatever he wanted. You know, maybe he has another Selesnya Charm, and it looks like he does.
So I think that turn overall for Keys is a pretty good one. You see Reid's going to play his Breeding Pool untapped and pass the turn back, so Prophet will actually untap that. Now, 6 mana is actually kind of a sweet spot for him. We saw Prime Speaker Zagana. We also know he has Aetherling in his deck as well, so 6 mana, he can do some things with that.
Yeah, Aetherling is a card that I would expect him to side out in this matchup.
Okay.
Doesn't seem like something you need specifically to beat this deck, but the potential is there, you know?
Temple Guard is going to come and play untapped. Keys is going to go down to 18. Again, 5 mana is a sweet spot for a green-white deck because of Boon Satyr and being able to bestow that. All the creatures are going to come into the red zone again here. Not too much of a surprise, and now the onus is on Duke to make the appropriate blocks.
Yeah, you got to imagine that Jared's feeling pretty safe with this attack. Last turn, maybe he was a little skeptical because Reid could do whatever he wanted, but so far Reid has had 2 turns with open mana and hasn't done anything with it.
So there's a pretty simple block, just an Elvish Mystic on the Loxodon Smiter. Really valuing that Prophet of Crew Fix very highly. It seems almost like Reid is trying to set a trap here. We'll see if Jared plays into it or if he's just happy dealing this amount of damage. Looks like he's going to pull the trigger on something. Yeah,
I think he definitely wants to make a move here and try and get in as much damage as possible before Reid can do something powerful like he did last game.
This is Selesnya Charm, and now here's a Boon Satyr that's just going to be hard cast. It's going to grow that Voice of Resurgence, and it'll also grow Experiment 1 as long as he does remember the evolution trigger.
So now we're looking at 13 points of damage, including trample, and Reid Duke is at 12 life.
It's not good. Does he remember the evolution trigger? I think that's the big key here.
I think he's still over by a point, so...
Yeah, he gets it done. Okay, fair enough. So Jared Keys is going to win game number 2 here over Reid Duke, and game number 3 is where we're heading. It just looks like Reid didn't have anything to do that game.
Yeah, he had a really great start. Turn 2 Elvish Mystic, turn 3 Pelucranos, turn 4 Prophet, and then just nothing after that.
Yeah. And his deck actually has a lot of things to do. He's got a ton of creatures, Court of Calling, things like that. He just didn't really put anything together, so we'll head to a third one.
Yeah, I mean, he also has 24 land in his deck, which is a little higher than most green-based Devotion decks.
Okay.
So that could certainly be an issue. Maybe it was, you know, simple case of flood.
I want to see Yisan.
Me too.
I want to see it.
Me too.
I need it. It's a sweet card, and I want to see it in action. Truthfully, it might be too slow for this matchup, though.
Maybe.
Green-white does not mess around.
That is certainly true. Yeah, you saw that game. Like, even though Jared got out kind of slow with the 2 temples, by turn 4 and 5, like, he was doing a lot of stuff, you know? All of his creatures just grew to immense proportions, and he had, like, the trample to finish off Reid. Like, he is not messing around for sure. But Yisan is one of those cards where you look at it, it looks kind of simple. You're like, oh, you know, maybe I can understand, like, what this does. Maybe it gets a Mystic, and then it gets, like, a Scavenging Ooze, and then you just go from there. But, like, maybe it's even more ridiculous than that. You know, like, with Prophet of Crew Fix and just, like, a lot of crazy stuff going on. Maybe it looks even better than just, you know, a simple value creature.
This is the kind of card, right, where, like, people look at it and it's like, okay, I can definitely see what's going on here, but, like, how do I build a deck with this card?
Yeah.
I don't know. Someone else will figure it out. I'm going to keep playing Mono Blue
Exactly.
Devotion.
So, Reid Duke, please show us.
Yeah, that's what I want to see happen. Because it seems like, you know, if that card's really good and someone figures it out, it can be, like, format defining.
Yeah, I mean, if we imagine that there are not going to be very many blue-white control decks in the room, there are a lot of creatures.
Yep.
Most of the decks have creatures, and they're trying to kill you with them one way or the other. but Yisan is one of those cards that can break open creature stalls, for sure. So if Reid has found the answer, that's going to be pretty important.
Both players are going to take a look at 7 cards here. Duke will be on the play this game. Hasn't been on the play yet this match, so we'll see if he's able to take advantage of that. Again, he has a lot of acceleration in his deck. Keys is always going to be the aggressor, as Green-White is not a deck that has any interest in playing any defense. And Duke is going to start off with a Temple of Mystery, so it looks like both players are going to keep their 7. You can see in Reid's hand right now, there is a Prophet of Krufix over there, so we'll see if he can work his way towards that, as he does leave the top card on top of his deck from the Temple. Keys will draw a card. It's a copy of Temple Garden, oftentimes an important one for this deck. And we'll see if he has a turn 1 play this game. Looks like he might fire off with a Temple of Mystery.
Plenty.
Excuse me, plenty. Thank you.
It's okay.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's a Kiora's follower, and we will pass the turn back over to Keys. Keys will draw a card. A Temple Garden comes into play tap. Looks like we have a 1-drop, and it will be Experiment 1 yet again. So Keys off to a decent start, a little slow out of the gate, but Duke is anything but here.
Yeah, third game in a row where Jared has a turn 2 Experiment 1 and nothing before that, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's hard to say how much that matters versus the scry that you get from the Temple.
I mean, you can definitely see the cost of playing Temple of Plenty. It's readily apparent in all 3 games that we've watched.
Yeah, oh, and we have it.
Yes, it is here, finally. Yisan's here. Jared's taking a look. Don't worry, Jared. We're going to do the same.
Yeah.
This thing has a lot of text. It can be a lot of fun. There is the Wanderer Bard, Commander, Superstar, potentially. Put a verse counter on this thing. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to the number of verse counters on Yisan. Put it directly into play, and then shuffle your library. You start with a Mystic. You work your way up to a follower, then the 3, the 4, and then things can get out of control. A second Experiment 1, followed up by a Fleecemane Lion, will evolve both of those into 2/2s.
Unfortunately, Yisan, 2/3.
Tough. Real tough guy. Duke is going to untap. He will take a draw as we move to his 4th turn here. You can see an island in his hand. I believe he has got that Prophet from the beginning of the game, too. So he's going to tap 5 land very quickly. He will deploy a Prophet of Krufix. He'll pass the turn back, untap everything, and now the fun begins.
Yeah, so Reid Duke, we're just talking about how he's normally a very methodical player, but he played those last 2 turns very quickly.
For him, those were fast.
Yeah.
Those were fast. Now here's a Temple Guard that comes into play tapped. This is 3 mana. That's a Loxodon Smiter. That's going to evolve these into 3/3s. So now he's got 3 3/3s that can attack and 2 Experiment 1s and a Fleecemane Lion. And they're all coming in, yeah.
Actually, Cedric, how do you feel about attacking with the 2 1/1s last turn into the 2/3?
I don't like it.
No?
No.
You seem like the type.
Well, I've been known to bluff attack. I've also been known to jump attack.
Yeah,
so
that's certainly true.
Hold steady. Hold steady. 9 damage is going to come across. Reid going to use his life total as a resource as it goes to 11. Now it's time to start getting active. A reverse counter goes on Yisan, and it's time to search for a 1. Can Yisan pull him out of this? Getting a Mystic is actually probably pretty important because it's going to add to the amount of mana he can make per turn.
Yep, certainly.
And what's cool now is the combination between Prophet and Yisan. He can activate Yisan on his turn.
Pass
and then
the turn.
Prophet's going to untap everything.
Yep.
So this is actually kind of a sweet interaction.
Yeah, normally you see things like Yisan, play this ability only as a sorcery.
Yep.
But in this deck, it just ends up working out really favorably with Prophet of Krufix.
I don't know which card I'm more excited about between the Prophet and Yisan.
It's the combination of both.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
I've wanted to see Prophet get played for so long. It's such a cool and just like really good card. What 2s does he have?
He has 4 Kiora's followers. He's not messing around there. 1 Sylvan Caryatid, 1 Burning Tree Emissary, 1 Scavenging Ooze.
Okay.
And potentially a Skylasher out of the sideboard, which I really hope he did not bring in here.
All right, he's going active. It's time to search for a 2.
So in this spot, he can get something like his Burning Tree Emissary, add 2 mana, and then play something bigger.
Okay.
Which is pretty cool. Could get a Scavenging Ooze to maybe chump block and then gain some life back later. But yeah, it looks like he's just getting Burning Tree Emissary.
So now he's get 2 mana from that. Oh, wow.
I see.
I missed that.
Yep, me too.
I actually missed that. Okay.
See, that's one of those things where we're talking about like Yisan. Maybe it's better than we think.
Okay.
And it's like we're talking about Kiora, like giving things vigilance or whatever. Well, turns out you just activate Yisan twice.
All right, so now we're gonna get a Courser.
Reid Duke the Master, ladies and gentlemen.
That's like Deceiver Exarch with like Pod.
Yes.
Like in like a roundabout way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Courser's going to reveal the top card. He has not played a land yet this turn.
Correct.
And he could use a point of life, probably.
Yeah, that'd certainly be helpful.
And another land, of course.
I mean, granted, he's at 11, and Jared has, 13 power in play or whatever, but...
Okay, so there's a profit off the top of the deck. There's a breeding pool. He's going to gain a life, so he's going to go up to 12. And, of course, that breeding pool is going to tap along with everything else here. And Reid has enough mana to activate...
He has 6 plus follower plus Yisan, so that's 2 more activations.
That's 2 more activations because Mystic's not sick. Okay,
right.
So he passes the turn back.
So the first one is almost certainly going to get a Nylea's Disciple. That's going to be my
guess. Okay, that's nice. He'll gain 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 10 life.
Yeah, but with that trigger on the stack, he could also untap Yisan and get a 5.
Oh, no. Oh, baby.
So he can just fog this entire attack. And for 5s, he has more profits and an Arbor Colossus, which maybe he took out.
I don't know, that thing's huge.
It is really big. I mean, green-white is typically not known for its flyers, but it's also not well known for being able to get through a 6/6.
Yeah, I mean, it's not known for its flyers, but it is a way to make sure that you don't lose to an Ajani jump.
That is true.
That could actually matter. I mean, I imagine that with the way that Reid kind of gums up games on the ground, that's one of the few ways he can lose to this deck.
Yeah, that is certainly true. Although he does go up to 4 copies of Nylea's Disciple, so I don't think it's uncommon for him to get up to like 30 life also.
Sure.
But that is sort of the backdoor way. I think Arbor Colossus is just like the one and done. You sit on it with profit, and it's very difficult for them to interact with.
Jared is going to go reaching for mana. Can he do anything that is as powerful as Reid has done with Yisan thus far?
No. Well, that's certainly not true.
Okay.
It's a matter of whether or not he can fight through this somehow.
This feels like maybe a Banishing Light.
Yeah.
It's a good time to cast one of those. He's going to start by attacking first. This could go very poorly.
We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, last time this happened, this could go very poorly. And Reid says, all right, 1 second. I'm going to activate this thing. It's going up to 4 verse counters. Prophet, you go away. Reid's going to play. There is Nylea's Disciple. Now, he doesn't see the play that you mentioned, which is with, well, maybe.
Well, he still has to reveal his top card.
That's true. Okay. So he's going to offer to let Jared cut the deck. He will do that. We'll see if the Disciple trigger is on the stack or not. Top card is a Forest. Okay, who am I kidding?
Yeah,
Reid doesn't see it. You know what, Reid? When you go back and watch this, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that I
had faith.
That I thought for a moment that maybe you would miss that interaction with putting that on the stack and then searching up for another big green creature.
And there it is.
Yeah, there is.
Arbor Colossus is still in the deck.
Yep, the big 6/6 is on defense now. So when it's all said and done, the 6/6 will come into play, and the Disciple's trigger, will resolve, and we're going to gain a whole bunch of life.
Looks like 13 life.
And you see Reid's going to do the count right now for how much life he is going to gain. And then, blocking needs to be done.
Yeah, it gets to be done. And there's a Prime Speaker Zagan on top.
And the only thing he's missing to this puzzle is like a Nykthos, and I'm not even convinced that he needs one this game.
No, I mean, it just looks like Prophet and Yisan are its own little Nykthos.
Yeah, it does really, really feel that way, especially in combination with Kiora's follower.
Yeah,
things spiral out of control. So it's time to block. Looks like Disciple's going to get in front of a 3/3 Experiment 1. Arbor Colossus looks like it's going to block a Smiter. There might be some double blocks here and there. We'll see what happens when the dust settles here. But Duke is at a comfortable life total, and I was wondering how good Yisan was going to be in this matchup. It looks like the answer is very.
Yeah, we thought that maybe it might be a little too slow, but in combination with Prophet, it just catches you up super quickly.
Yep. I can't believe he missed the trigger with the Emissary. He gets to untap and do all that again. That was really cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw the Burning Tree, Yeah. I didn't see what he was going to do with the mana, but...
This is really, really cool. So here are your blocks. It looks like we've got Courser and Emissary on a 3/3 Experiment 1, which is going to cause that to regenerate and shrink down to a 1/1, presumably. He's going to let one of those Experiment 1s through. He's got Nylea's Disciple in front of Fleecemane line, which can't go monstrous since there are only 4 lands in play. And then you've got the 6/6 Arbor Colossus in front of the Loxodon Smiter. That block is safe because it did not get Selesnya Charmed pre-combat.
True.
So you have to imagine that Arbor Colossus is probably going to win that war.
Yeah, Reid's doing a really good job here, putting up 3 blocks that Jared does not want to see.
This is an Advent of the Worm. And a 5/5 Worm token is pretty good most times. It's going to evolve those Experiment 1s into 4/4s. But, again, that's not that exciting when you're at 25 life. When your opponent, is at 25 life. So some things are going to trade here in just a moment. You see Jared's going to organize the blockers in the 4/4 Experiment 1 to figure out which one he wants to kill. I imagine it will be the Courser.
It could be the Courser, but then that trades. He could also regenerate and then assign damage to the Burning Tree Emissary first.
Sure.
So he would just get to kill that, and then it looks like the Lion and the Disciple will trade, and the Smiter will just die.
Okay.
So overall, a pretty fantastic turn for Reid Duke.
There can be no complaints here. And Jared is going to lose a bunch of stuff, and Reid is going to be left over with plenty of stuff.
Yeah. And certainly more gas in the tank with the Zagana on top.
Now, Yisan is at 5. He can go up to 6. So Zagana and Aetherling, I think, are the only options at 6?
Yeah.
Okay. And we think that Aetherling is probably out of his deck because he probably doesn't need it in this matchup.
Yeah, I think so.
Top card will not be revealed since there is no longer a Courser in play, but we did see the Prime Speaker Zagana that Reid did draw and can cast this turn. There you do see behind Reid, the Boz, Andy Boswell, hanging out second place in Baltimore a couple weeks ago with green-white aggro, one of his favorite decks.
Who do you think he's rooting for? The guy playing green-white aggro or his childhood friend Reid Duke?
Secretly, I think green-white aggro.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Yeah. Here comes Big Daddy Arbor Colossus into the red zone. So one of my favorite things, you know, when a rotation happens is, you know, cards obviously go away, cards come in, and then cards from the current set, like from Theros, they get better due to context. I feel like Arbor Colossus is one of those cards that has just been like criminally underplayed. And
it's a 5-mana 6/6.
For whatever reason, I feel like this card's gonna get better and see more play. Because like it's already like okay in like these devotion decks.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, we're going to need an answer to like Stormbreath Dragon or something.
Sure.
And I feel like that's going to fulfill that role. As Reid does search up a Prime Speaker Zagana here, he's going to draw another mitt full of cards this game.
Kind of unnecessary at this point.
Well, I mean, when you got it going.
Yeah.
It's hard to say no. This looks like 7 cards coming here for Reid. Oh, Prime Speaker. This one's on its way out the door, actually, in a couple weeks.
It is, and just a very, very powerful card. Kind of surprised at how little it's seen play.
I am too. I mean, there's definitely some assembly required to make it really, really good. And it had like a little bit of time. We used to see like, you know, Prime Speaker Bant decks,
yeah.
But it never really, you know, ran rampant. As now here's a Nykthos activation.
Yeah, so for even more overkill, Reid draws an entirely new hand, plays a Nykthos.
Of course, is where you start. Yapamaikos is the top card. I actually forgot that this deck actually gets access to that card.
Yep.
The mana, I imagine, is already pretty good in this deck, but that can't hurt.
It is pretty good. Reid does have the full 12 dual lands. And Kiora's follower to potentially fix if he does have access to both colors already, but he does have to play like 3 islands and 3 Nykthos, so that could create some kind of like rough mulligan decisions.
He's just going to deploy most of his hand here. There's a Yisan. He's going to play a new one.
Reset it.
Yep.
Get the chain going again.
Because once you get to 6, you can't go any further.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just shuffle your deck.
Yeah.
You know, you don't like that card that's on top of Courser or whatever.
So Reid now untaps everything, and Jared, well, it is your turn. There's a Mana Confluence. And he's staring at a bunch of green creatures. Brian Kibler must be so happy.
Yeah, the green mirror.
Yeah, I know Brian doesn't really like to dabble in blue with his green cards, but maybe it's time. Maybe it's time.
Zagana is pretty powerful. Maybe Prophet is a little too tricksy. I think, you know, Kibler would probably go with a straightforward green-white deck, which he did at the last Pro Tour, but...
His Golgari experiments never really panned out, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true.
The mana was just too bad in the deck, even though they did get Llanowar Waste. So maybe it's a little bit better.
Yeah. I do feel like Reid just loves himself a Simic, you know?
Yes.
Simic anything.
Yeah. This is 3 mana. This is a Banishing Light. That's a little late to the party. It will take care of Yisan, but the damage has already been done from that card. So we'll see if Jared has any attacks. Or I don't imagine there are any good ones.
Doesn't look like it, but now, you know, Reid has access to 30 mana, maybe.
Yeah, ish.
Let's see what he can do.
Well, it's time to activate Nykthos, as he's going to add a bunch of green mana.
Another Yisan.
Okay. And a Disciple to gain, oh my goodness, so much life. Best of luck counting that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Looks like just 17. And activate Monstrosity on that. Anything else? That's it.
That's it.
That's it, okay.
The well might be dry.
Maybe on the upkeep. Okay, he's actually going to draw that. I thought maybe on the upkeep he might activate Yusan.
Yeah.
Make sure he doesn't draw that. He's going to play Yavimaya Coast, gain a life. Looks like Arbor Colossus and Prime Speaker are going to come into the red zone here.
And Reid could almost certainly just send everything, right? But
yep. He's going to play it safe because that's what he does, and he's going to win the match. Reid Duke is going to win this match over Jared Keys. Green-Blue Devotion / Yisan does defeat Green-White Aggro in 3 very entertaining games. And yes, as I did say during the middle of the match, don't worry, my friends. We will have a deck time.
Yeah.